Hello! How are you today? I hope you're doing so good because you deserve it. Welcome to Storytime with Miss Sparkles. That's me. Today, it has been a while. But today, we are going to continue our story with our favorite little mouse, Despereaux. We left off chapter 24. Remember, the rat was in the dungeon and he got mad because he was gonna go to the light, and then the king, things like that. All right, so here we go. Without any further ado, as you can tell, I got a nice backdrop. Got some of my He-Man stuff. I'm also dog sitting, so you might hear some animals or see some animals. I apologize. Well, there's a cat behind me right now. It's never a dull moment here in this household. Okay, here we go. The Tale of Despereaux. Book the 3rd. Gore. The Tale of Midgery Sow. My dog just came down the stairs. Chapter 24. A handful of cigarettes, a red tablecloth, and a hen. Again, reader, we must go backwards before we can go forwards. With that said, here begins a short history of the life and times of Midgery Sow. A girl born into this world many years before the mouse Despereaux and the rat Chiaroscuro. I said that wrong. Chiaroscuro. A girl born far from the castle, a girl named for her father's favorite, prize-winning pig. Midgery Sow was 6 years old when her mother, holding on to Midge's hand and staring directly into Midge's eyes, died. "Ma," said Midge. "Ma, couldn't you stay here with me?" "Oh," said her mother, "who is that? Who is that holding my hand?" "It's me, Ma, Midgery Sow." "Ah, child, let me go." "But I want you to stay here," said Midge, wiping first at her runny nose and then her runny eyes. "You want," said her mother. "Yes," said Midge, "I want." "Ah, child, and what does it matter what you are wanting?" said her mother. She squeezed Midge's hand once, twice, and then she died, leaving Midge alone with her father, who, on a market day in spring soon after his wife's death, sold his daughter into service for a handful of cigarettes, a red tablecloth, and a hen. "Papa," said Midge, when her father was walking away from her with the hen in his arms, a cigarette in his mouth, and the tablecloth draped over his shoulders like a cape. "Go on, Midge," he said. "You belong to that man now." "But I don't want to, Papa," she said. "I want to go with you." She took hold of the red tablecloth and tugged on it. "Lord, child," her father said, "and who is asking you what you want? Go on now." He untangled her fingers from the cloth and turned her in the direction of the man who had bought her. Midge watched her father walk away, the red tablecloth billowing out from behind him. He left his daughter. And reader, as you already know, he did not look back, not even once. Can you imagine it? Can you imagine your father selling you for a tablecloth, a hen, and a handful of cigarettes? Close your eyes, please, and consider it just for a moment. Done? I hope that the hair on the back of your neck stood up as you thought of Midge's fate and how it would be if it were your own. Poor Midge. What will become of her? You must, frightened though you may be, read on and see for yourself. Reader, it is your duty. Chapter 25. a vicious circle. Midgery Sow called the man who purchased her uncle, as he said she must, and also, as he said she must, Midge tended Uncle's sheep, and cooked Uncle's food, and scrubbed Uncle's kettle. She did all this without a word of thanks or praise from the man himself. Another unfortunate act of life with Uncle was that he very much liked giving Midge what he referred to as a good clout to the ear. In fairness to Uncle, it must be reported that he did always inquire whether or not Midge was interested in receiving the clout. Their daily exchanges went something like this. Uncle, I thought I told you to clean the kettle. Midge, I cleaned it, Uncle. I cleaned it good. Uncle, it's filthy. You'll have to be punished, won't ye? Midge, Uncle, I cleaned the kettle. Uncle, are you saying that I'm a liar, girl? Midge, no, Uncle. Uncle, do you want a good clout to the ear then? Midge, no, thank you, Uncle, I don't. Alas, Uncle seemed to be as entirely unconcerned with what Midge wanted as her mother and father had wanted. The discussed clout to the ear was always delivered. Delivered, I am afraid, with a great deal of enthusiasm on Uncle's part, and received with absolutely no enthusiasm at all on the part of Midge. These clouts were alarmingly frequent, and Uncle was scrupulously fair in paying attention to both the right and the left side of Midgery Sow. So it was that, after a time, the young Midge's ears came to resemble not so much ears as pieces of cauliflower stuck to each side of her head. And they became about as useful to her as pieces of cauliflower. That is to say, that they all ceased their functioning as ears. Words for Midge lost their sharp edges, and then they lost their edges altogether, and became blurry, blankety things she had a great deal of trouble making any sense out of at all. The less Midge heard, the less she understood. The less she understood, the more things she did wrong, and the more things she did wrong, the more clout to the ears she received, and the less she heard. This is what is known as a vicious circle. And Midgery Sow was right in the center of it, which is not, reader, where anybody would want to be. But then, as you know, what Midgery Sow wanted had never been much concern to anyone. How sad. So a clout to the ear is basically he would smack her upside the head right on the ear. It's called cauliflower ear. And boxers get it, and people who fight get it. Chapter 26, Royalty. When Midge turned 7 years old, there was no cake, no celebration, no singing, no present, no acknowledgement of her birthday at all, other than Midge saying, Uncle, today I am 7 years old. And Uncle saying in return, Did I ask ye how old you were today? Get out of my face before I give you a good clout to the ear. A few hours after receiving her birthday clout to the ear, Midge was out in the field with Uncle's sheep when she saw something glittering and glowing on the horizon. She thought for a moment that it was the sun, but she turned and saw that the sun was in the west, where it should be, sinking to join the earth. This thing that shone so brightly was something else. Midge stood in the field and shaded her eyes with her left hand and watched the brilliant light draw closer and closer and closer until it revealed itself to be King Philip and his Queen Rosemary and their daughter, the young Princess P. The royal family was surrounded by knights in shining armor and horses in shining armor, and atop each member of the royal family's head there was a golden crown. They were all the king and queen and the princess, dressed in robes decorated with jewels and sequins that glittered and glowed and captured the light of the setting sun and reflected it back. Gore, breathed Midge. The Princess P was riding on a white horse that picked up its legs very high and sat down very daintily. The P saw Midge standing and staring, and she raised a hand to her. Hello! The Princess P called out merrily, Hello! And she waved her hand again. Midge did not wave back. Instead, she stood and watched. So here is Midge, staring at the king and queen as they're driving by. Gore! She stood and watched, open-mouthed, as the perfect, beautiful family passed her by. "Papa," called the princess to the king, "what is wrong with the girl? She will not wave to me." "Never mind," said the king. "It is of no consequence, my dear." "But I am a princess, and I wave to her. She should wave back." Midge, for her part, continued to stare. Looking at the royal family had awakened some deep and slumbering need in her. It was as if a small candle had been lit in her interior, sparked to life by the brilliance of the king and queen and the princess. For the first time in her life, reader, Midge hoped. And hope is like love, a ridiculous, wonderful, powerful thing. Midge tried to name this strange emotion. She put a hand up to touch one of her aching ears, and she realized that the feeling she was experiencing, the hope blooming inside of her, felt exactly the opposite of a good clout. She smiled and took her hand away from the ear. She waved to the princess. "Today is my birthday!" Midge called out. But the king and queen and the princess were now too far away to hear her. "Today!" shouted Midge. "I am 7 years old!" Oh, she felt hope. Oh, such a good feeling. Chapter 27, A Wish. That night, in the small, dark hut that she shared with Uncle and the sheep, Midge tried to speak of what she had seen. "Uncle," she said. "Eh?" "I saw some human stars today." "How's that?" "I saw them all glittering and glowing, and there was a little princess wearing her own crown and riding on a little white tippy-toed horse." "What are you going on about?" said Uncle. "I saw a king and a queen and a itty-bitty princess," shouted Midge. "So?" shouted Uncle back. "I would like," said Midge shyly. "I wish to be one of them princesses." "Ha!" laughed her uncle. "Ha! An ugly, dumb thing like you! You ain't even worth the enormous lot I paid for ye. Don't I wish every night that I'd backed that good hen and that red tablecloth in place for you?" He did not wait for Midge to guess the answer to this question. "I do," he said. "I wish it every night. That tablecloth was the color of blood. That hen could lay eggs like nobody's business." "I want to be a princess," said Midge. "I want to wear a crown." "A crown?" Uncle laughed. "She wants to wear a crown, you say?" He laughed harder. He took the empty kettle and put it atop his head. "Look at me," he said. "I'm a king. See me crown? I'm a king just like I always wanted to be. I'm a king because I want to be one." He danced around the hut with the kettle on his head. He laughed until he cried, and then he stopped dancing and took the kettle down off his head and looked at Midge and said, "Do you want a good clout to the ear for such nonsense?" "No, thank you, Uncle," said Midge, but she got one anyway. "Look here," said Uncle after the clout had been delivered. "We will hear no more talk of princesses. Besides, whoever asked you what you wanted in this world, girl?" The answer to that question, reader, is, as you well know, was absolutely no one. Poor Midge. Poor Midge. Chapter 28, To the Castle. Years passed. Midge spent them scrubbing the kettle and tending the sheep and cleaning the hut, collecting innumerable, uncountable, extremely painful clouts to the ear. In the evening, spring or winter, summer or fall, Midge stood in the field as the sun set, hoping that the royal family would pass before her again. "Gore, I would like to see that little princess another time, wouldn't I? And her little pony, too, with his tippy-toed feet. This hope, this wish, that she would see the princess again was lodged deep in Midge's heart. Lodged firmly right next to it was the hope that she, Midgery Sow, could someday become a princess herself. The first of Midge's wishes was granted in a roundabout way when King Philip outlawed soup. The king's men were sent out to deliver the grim news and to collect from the people of the kingdom of Dor their kettles, their spoons, and their bowls. Reader, you know exactly how and why this law came to pass, so you would not be surprised as surprised as Uncle was when on one Sunday a soldier of the king knocked on the door of the hut that Midge and Uncle and the sheep shared and announced that soup was against the law. "How's that?" said Uncle. "By royal order of King Philip," repeated the soldier, "I am sent here to tell you that soup has been outlawed in the kingdom of Dor. You will, by order of the king, never again consume soup, nor will you think of it or talk about it. And I, as one of the king's loyal servants, am here to take from you your spoons, your kettles, and your bowls." "But that can't be," said Uncle. "Nevertheless, it is. What do we eat?" "What do we eat it with?" "Cake," suggested the soldier. "With a fork." "And wouldn't that be lovely," said Uncle, "if we could afford to eat cake?" The soldier shrugged. "I am only doing my duty. Please hand over your spoons, your bowls, and your kettle." Uncle grabbed hold of his beard. He let go of his beard and grabbed the hair on his head. "Unbelievable!" he shouted. "I suppose next king will be wanting my sheep and my girl, seeing if those are the only possessions I have left." "Do you own a girl?" said the soldier. "I do," said Uncle. "A worthless one, but still she is mine." "Ah," said the soldier, "that, I am afraid, is against the law too. No human may own another in the kingdom of Dor." "But I paid for her fair and square, with a good laying hen, and a handful of cigarettes, and a blood-red tablecloth." "No matter," said the soldier. "It is against the law to own another. Now, you will hand over to me, if you please, your spoons, your bowls, your kettle, and your girl. Or, if you choose not to hand over these things, then you will come with me to be imprisoned in the castle dungeon. Which will it be?" And that is how Midgery Sow came to be sitting in a wagon full of soup-related items next to a soldier of the king. "Do you have parents?" said the soldier. "I will return you to them." "Eh?" "A ma," shouted the soldier. "Dead," said Midge. "Your pa?" shouted the soldier. "I ain't seen him. He sold me." "Right. I'll take you to the castle then." "Go," said Midge, looking around the wagon in confusion. "You want me to paddle?" "To the castle," shouted the king. "I'll take you to the castle." "The castle? Where the itty-bitty princess lives?" "That's right." "Go," said Midge. "I aim to be a princess too someday." "That's a fine dream," said the soldier. He clucked to the horse and tapped to the reins, and they took off. "I'm happy to be going," said Midge, putting a hand up and gently touching one of her cauliflower ears. "Might just as well be happy, seeing it as it doesn't make a difference to anyone but you if you are not." "Oh, my bad, sir. That was the soldier's part. Hold on." "Might just as well be happy, seeing as it doesn't make a difference to anyone but you if you are not," said the soldier. "We will take you to the castle, and they will set you up fine. You no longer will be a slave. You will be a paid servant." "Eh?" said Midge. "You will be a servant," shouted the soldier, "not a slave." "Go," said Midge, satisfied. "A servant I will be, not a slave." She was 12 years old. Her mother was dead. Her father had sold her. Her uncle, who wasn't her uncle at all, had clouded her until she was almost deaf. And she wanted more than anything in the world to be a little princess, wearing a golden crown and riding a high-stepping white horse. Reader, Do you think it is a terrible thing to hope when there is really no hope at all? Or is it, as the soldier said, about happiness? Something that you might just as well do, since in the end, it really makes no difference to anyone but you. Chapter 29. Start with the kersey and finish with the thread. Midgery Sow's luck continued. On her first day on the job as a castle servant, she was sent to deliver a spool of red thread to the princess. Mind, said the head of the serving staff, a dour woman named Louise. She is royalty, so you must make sure you curtsy. How's that? Shouted Midge. You must curtsy, shouted Louise. Go, said Midge. Yes'm. She took the spool of thread from Louise and made her way up the golden stairs to the princess's room, talking to herself as she went. Here I am, off to see the princess. Me, Midgery Sow, seeing the princess up close and personal like. And first off, I must curtsy, because she is royalty. Now, how did that go? She said. Give the princess the thread, and then give her a curtsy. No. First, curtsy, and then the thread. That's it. Oh, that's right. That's the order. Start with the curtsy, finish with the thread. She knocked at the princess's door. Enter, said the pea. Midge, hearing nothing, knocked again. Enter, said the pea. And Midge, still hearing nothing, knocked yet again. Maybe, she said to herself, the princess ain't no home. Ain't to home. But then the door was flung wide, and there was the princess herself staring right at Midgery Sow. Go, said Midge, her mouth hanging open. Hello, said the pea. Are you the new serving maid? Have you brought me my thread? Curtsy I must, shouted Midge. She gathered her skirts, dropped the spool of thread, stuck a foot out, and stepped on the spool, rocked back and forth for what seemed like a long time, both to the watching princess and the rocking Midge, and finally fell to the floor with a midgish thud. Whoopsie, said Midgery Sow. The pea could not help it. She laughed. That's all right, she said to Midge, shaking her head. It's the spirit of the thing that counts. How's that? Shouted Midge. It's the spirit of the thing that counts, shouted Pea. Thank you, miss, said Midge. She got slowly to her feet and looked at the princess. She looked down at the floor. First the curtsy and then the thread, Midge muttered. Pardon? Said the pea. Go, said Midge. The thread! She dropped to her hands and knees to locate the spool of thread where she found it. When she found it, she stood back up and offered it to Pea. I brought you your thread, didn't I? Lovely, said the princess as she took the thread from Midge. Thank you so much. I cannot seem to hold on to a spool of red thread. Everyone I have disappears somehow. Where have we heard from red thread before? Are you making a thing? Asked Midge, squinting at the cloth in the pea's hand. I am making a history of the world. My world, said the pea, in tapestry. See, here is my father, the king, and he is playing the guitar because that is something he loves to do and does quite well. And here is my mother, the queen, and she is eating soup because she loved soup. Soup? Go! That's against the law. Yes, said the princess, my father outlawed it because my mother died while she was eating it. Your ma's dead? Yes, said the pea, she died just last month. She bit her bottom lip to stop it from trembling. Ain't that the thing, said Midge. My ma's dead too. How old were you when she died? Bold was I, said Midge, taking a step back and away from the princess. I'm sorry then. No, no, no. How old? How old were you? Shouted the pea. Not but 6, said Midge. I'm sorry, said the princess. She gave Midge a quick, deep look of sympathy. How old are you now? 12 years. So am I, said the princess. We're the same age. What is your name? She shouted. Midgery. Midgery Sow. But most just calls me Midge. And I saw you once before, princess. You passed me by on a little white horse on my birthday it was, and I was in the field with Uncle's sheep, and it was sunset time. Did I wave to you? Asked the princess. Eh? Did I wave? Shouted the pea. Yes, nodded Midge. But you didn't wave back, said the princess. I did, said Midge, only you didn't see. Some day I will sit on a little white horse and wear a crown and wave. Some day, said Midge, and she put up a hand to touch her left ear. I will be a princess too. Really? Said the pea, and she gave Midge another quick, deep look, but said nothing else. When Midge finally made her way back down the golden stairs, Louise was waiting for her. How long, she roared, did it take you to deliver a spool of thread to the princess? Too long? Guessed Midge. That's right, said Louise, and she gave Midge a good clout to the ear. You are not destined to be one of our star servants. That is already abundantly clear. No, ma'am, said Midge. It's all right, though, because I aim to be a princess. You? A princess? Don't make me laugh. This, reader, was a little joke on Louise's part, as she was not a person who laughed. Ever. Not even at a notion as ridiculous as Midgery Sow becoming a princess. Oh, poor Midgery. Such a sad life. That would just be so heartbreaking that it didn't matter what you wanted and nobody asked what you wanted, and to be hit in the head all the time till you can't hear. And all she wanted was to hope. Well, just like the book says, hope is just as good as love. It's ridiculous and it's powerful. So, thank you for joining me today with story time with Miss Sparkles. And I hope you have a great day. And remember, stay brave.